you have decides to start with a prayer?
Prayer.
Yeah.
Okay, let us pray.
Okay.
Dear Father, we are so very thankful for your love and your mercy towards us. We thank you, dear Lord, for your kind protection throughout the week, for keeping us safe, keeping us in our right minds. Dear Lord, and tonight as we celebrate the Sabbath day, we pray that indeed we might find rest, that our souls might find rest. Teach us now as we study your words, as we ask all these mercies in your sweet name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. We are going to have a study now. Let me see a moment. We are going to share the screen. Now, can you see, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are seeing it.
Okay. Now I'm going to present the topic of Brother Jacob have to present, and he did it before because he was not prepared. Okay. So the topic is natural disaster in Russia. And I am going to present almost a similar that Sister Rose presented about Australia, but I'm going to try to show the line of events, the natural events that passing in Russia. Okay. So what we know about Russia and disaster naturals? You have an idea? You have something? You listen something about news or articles? Are you there?
Yeah, I don't. Russia doesn't come to my mind in first place when I think of natural disasters. Yes, I'm thinking more of the Caribbean or United States, like South Asia, like China. Yes, but I remember there were a couple of things in the recent years.
Okay, that's good. And that is exactly what we know about Russia. Russia is one of the countries that they don't have so much natural disasters in their country. It's a country that is considered more stable, but they also have disaster natural, but it's not too often. Okay, so it's a good country in that aspect. But I want to know if you know which is the position of Russia about the climate change. You know something?
I really know nothing about Russian position on climate change.
Okay, but if you realize that it's a country that doesn't suffer so much, it's not often to suffer the natural disaster, how do you believe will be the position of them?
Then they won't be a pro climate change fan. They won't believe in it.
Yeah, they don't estimate so much the topic or don't pay attention necessarily how should to do it. Okay. But in January of 2020, Putin made a declaration in the media conference that he officially have is 1 year, and he made this declaration. Someone can read, please?
Okay. What is the Russian position? It says Putin does not see the hand of man in climate change. This may depend on global processes in the universe, he said at his annual press conference in December.
Okay. What do you understand of that declaration?
I guess he's saying that he does not see that humans are affecting any are making any change in the climate. So whatever is happening, it's not because of humans. He's saying this is just, I don't know,
Natural
something
occurrence.
natural that man has nothing to do with.
Okay, that is exactly. And someone have an idea why he said that?
I can imagine that measures against global warming are usually not very well seen or well accepted for by the industry, and it may not be in the Russia's industry's interest to support climate change ideas.
Yeah, he doesn't attribute the responsibility to the humans. So any kind of industry or business that the human can make it, they are not the responsible for the natural disaster or change, the climate change. So what it say is there is another reason we have no complete sure the human cannot have that ability or that possibility to create such damage. Okay, so we are going to speak a little bit more about the history of natural disasters in Russia, and the last bigger natural disaster that Russia lived was in 1995. It was an earthquake in Sakhalin is the name of the city, Sakhalin. In that city, it was an earthquake more strong than all the history of the United States. It's an area where always have the, how do you say, amenaza awareness? It is awareness?
No, threat.
Always have the threat of earthquakes, but it's not common to suffer earthquakes. But when they happen, could be strong. In 1995, it was an earthquake of 7.5, no, 7.6 in the scale of Richter, and it was super strong. Basically, the earth, it was open in all the communities, many communities, it was fell there and many people was buried and they couldn't find it. It was a team of rescue, but it's not, they don't make so much efforts because the people that get buried was very, very deep and it was impossible. And only the people that they can rescue they can translate, they move from another new towns, new populations they created, because there was nothing that we can rescue in that place. What they put is like a many lapids in commemoration of all the people that died in that earthquake. And this was the hard event, or a strong event in the history of Russia. But it was in 1995. So after that kind of event, and the events is on the rest of the world, like Europe, South America, United States, that they are countries or areas where is more often the natural disaster. The institution of control of the climate change, they start to evaluate what is the cause for these disasters, and they determine that is the contamination, is the global warming in the world that is provoking that event. And they start to observe more the nature and the behavior and what aspect they are affecting in order to prevent that kind of disaster natural. This earthquake in Russia, they was not, they don't receive advertencia, let's say,
Warning.
warnings. Yeah, they don't receive a warning. So basically, it was not no possibility to escape of that event. And perhaps there was, but they don't believe. So when the world started to talk about the climate change, Putin started to make jokes about that issue. And in 2003, he said, oh, if the world is hitting a little bit more, like a 3-degree more, it will be great for us because Russia, it is a super cool country. And it's not going to be bad to be more warned climate change in that aspect. And he make a joke, he say, if this happens, we can economize in our further codes. So he started to say that's kind of jokes in 2003. Later, in 2015, he said one of the gravest challenges. What you know what happened in 2015? Someone have an idea?
No, not in Russia. I would only think they have conflict with Trump.
Sorry?
I said I have no idea. Probably they might have conflict with Trump.
Yeah. Many things happened in 2015, but in relation with the climate change, what happened, it was that in 2015 address to the UN, the United Nations, Putin has changed this tone, start to be more more aware about the knowledge of the climate change. It's one of the gravest changes humanity is facing. He started to recognize the importance of this issue. And promising by 2013 to cut Russia emissions by 70 to 75% compared with 1990 levels. So what happened in that year is that 2014, it was an important year in the topic or in the matter of the climate change, because it was the year where the global warming, it was increasing 14%, that it was not supposed to be is not supposed to happen for this year because it's too soon that it was too projected. But the numbers of the industry that was growing and all the work that was about deforestation, it was increasing the warning. There was nothing that purified the air or how to say, control the change of climatic change in that aspect, because the world was eradicating the forest, all that they can in that time. The industry of the wood was growing, and they doing that. In 2014, what happened, it was the more increasing, and in order to take measure to this damage that the world was causing, in 2015, what is happening was a Paris Convention, when they started talking about in the United Nations about this issue, like they start to be aware that it's not an issue too simple, that we have to take measure to avoid the damage that came. And in that convention, what happened is that in form of the Institute of the Observing of Natural Disasters or the climate change, they inform that the country that will be more affected for this damage, it will be Russia. You know why? Can you imagine why?
Because Russia is a cold country?
Yes. And all the ice that we that if they are going to start to lose for the global warming, they are going to be like increase the sea considerably. Like 5, Russia received that warning in 2015. Until 2020, they are going to increase the level of the sea almost 5 times more that supposedly to be if they care the environment. If you cannot understand me, can you make me repeat? Because my English is not so good now. Okay.
I understand what you're saying, sis. I mean,
okay.
So
Solange,
Great.
can you put on reproducir so we can see everything bigger, or is it not so convenient?
Okay, yeah, it's a good idea. Now?
Yes.
Okay. In 2017, what happened? But there cannot access another window, right? Can I go out again? Just a moment, please. 2015, it was for Putin, he was making a joke again, and he said that volcanic eruptions cause more damage to the global warming than all the men. And he said that's volcanic eruptions, they are responsible for more greenhouse gas emission than human economic activity. And that is that they determine in the Paris Convention or agreement that Russia was the country that more contaminate the world, because he is the bigger producer of these greenhouse gas emissions. So, and the proposal that he received in this Paris Agreement, it was that he had to change the economical activities, and it was a proposed there, or there is a proposed now, that in 2035 they can eliminate the production or reduce considerably the production or the salt of the cars with to gasoline or oil, any kind, and produce more vehicles of electronics vehicles.
Electric cars.
Electric. Thank you.
With vehicles, yes.
Yeah. And he attributed the blame or the fault to this global warming to the volcanics. And 1 year later, 2018, Putin said that the change was caused by the change of global characters. Like, for example, cosmic change, some invisible move in the galaxy. He said, for example, could be any reason to be that is causing this global warming. For example, the sun is moving for his place and descend a little bit. He create that things could be happening in the heaven or in the space, and that could be the reason. We don't have all this detail and only attribute to the human the blame, and he doesn't assume the responsibility, like looking at an excuse. In the IPCC, that is the institute that study about the climate change, in 2018 report that they presented in the United Nations climatologists again rule out theories that volcanic and cosmic change are responsible of the climate crisis. They refute that. They recognize that they cause the damage also, but it's not enough to cause such a big damage in all the rest of the world, you know, because not all the world have too much volcanic, and all they are not all are in activity. So we have to accept that there is some human activity that is causing more damage. And he demonstrated that report in 2018 at the Institute of Climate Change. In 2019, Putin also make a bomb like a shaking worm from the ground. What he says is like a shifted from outright denial of human-caused climate change to expressing a skepticism toward proposed solution like renewable energy. Like he said, it's a good idea, but it's not our is not our way that we work, is not our sources, it's not our plane. Basically, he said that. Blind faith in simply attractive but inefficient solution leads to problems. Putin said at 2019 industry conference, referring to the United States recommendation to start transitioning away from fossil fuels. But he said, we have to start to change, but in a transitional way, but not immediately. Of course, we have to make a change slowly, slow change that is not affected so much. But the promise also the United Nations is what if Russia make this effort to change or make this transition too quickly, they are going to support him, support Russia in economically until they get established, an economy established when they make that transition. But he was not agree so much. But in 2020, Putin have begun to recognize the humanity role in environment disasters. He said humans are still not protected by natural catastrophes, most of which have been caused by anthropogenic interference. Putin says during Badai Club plenary in October, human exploitation of natural resources create critical tension, which we can see in the case of climate change. He said, a problem that requires real action and way more attention. In 2021, this year, Putin says something that is impossible to believe yet that he's thinking in that way. He said, many people know without reason, thinking that the climate change is linked most of all to human activity to emission of population into the atmosphere, primarily CO2, dioxide of carbon, how do you say in English?
Do you have the text that we can read them? Or
It is zero carbon.
Yeah, I have, can I?
I mean,
No.
are they in the slides here? No.
No.
Okay, that's all right.
Let me see. I think it's that one. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Someone can read 2021, what he said? Can you read all this one?
At Wednesday's direct line event, an anonymous question asked Putin, what's happening with the climate? Why has nature gone mad? In reference to a recent cascade of extreme weather events across the country. Many people, not without reason, think that climate change is linked, most of all, to human activity, to emissions of pollutants into the atmosphere, primarily CO2, Putin answered. The tragedy isn't that the climate in different regions of the Earth changes periodically, but that some believe that when the climate changes in certain regions and on the entire planet, it will come to a certain dangerous point. And if humanity adds to that, then a reversible process may kick in, which will make our planet look like Venus, where the surface temperature is around 500 degrees Celsius. Putin noted that this theory could be wrong and underlined that humans can hardly affect the universe itself, against which they are nearly powerless. Yet we must minimize the impact we have, he said. He went on to discuss the direct threats of climate change to Russia, such as melting permafrost, desertification, and damage to agriculture. He also mentioned the government's latest plans aimed at preparing sectors of Russian economy for the inevitable consequences of climate change. Despite acknowledging these consequences, Putin didn't discuss specific policies aimed at cutting fossil fuel production or strengthening renewable energy. He also said Russia is currently doing more to fight climate change than the EU. Russia is meanwhile increasing its fossil fuel production and remaining the only one of the world's top 7 carbon emitters to have not yet presented a more ambitious climate policy ahead of COP26 that the Paris Agreement requires.
Yeah. What do you understand of that one? Can you make a resume of this, please?
So it's a little bit complicated. I do not know if I really understand what he is meaning. Yes, because he says the tragedy. So he is not saying there is no climate change. He says, yes, there's a climate change. But he is criticizing a little bit the idea. This is what I didn't really not quite understand.
What he say, okay, thank you. I'm going to try to explain in English. What he say, it is, okay, there is a climate change is tragedy now, and he start to recognize that the men are the cause now to do it. But even that, he make a joke and say, well, but it's good because it's warm and Russia start to, how do you say, derretir? What?
Melt.
He start to melt the ice. It will be good, will be great for our agriculture industry because we can planting more varieties of vegetables or plants or trees or I don't know, whatever. They can do it more. And he said, like he still believes in conspiracy theories, but don't assume that the role of the human in this problem, in this problematic, they excuse them. And the reason why they excuse is because Russia is the country that produce more this CO2 or the primary materia prima, how do you say?
I don't know.
Okay, the principal product that produce this CO2.
The primary producer.
Okay, yeah, primary producer of CO2, like oil, is one of the cause. The fact the United Nations present a project to start to produce, to find another kind of way to produce energy or cars or oil, try to avoid the use of oil. If this happens, Russia economy is going to be felt. It's going to be down because is the only way that Russia is living now by the oil is the strong aspect of their economy. You know, and it's 2020 when all the conspiracy theory is more attacking and is more proven, but all difference is like all the nations in the United Nations, everyone it was conscious, can see clearly. He is the only person that is a skeptic yet. And it was impressioning for us. So I want to show you what is the way that Russia was suffering different climate change after 23 that he 2003, sorry, after 2003 when he started to make these jokes, the nature started to speak to Russia in his own language. And pay attention. This is disaster that happened in 1995. This is a huge earthquake in Sakhalin. Was 60.6 in the Richter scale. Someone can read that information?
In recent times, the strongest earthquake in Russia, 7.6 on the Richter scale, occurred in May 1995 on Sakhalin Island. The wrath of nature annihilated the village of Neftegorsk in just 17 seconds, burying more than 2,000 people under the rubble, 2/3 of the population. Wow. Neftegorsk was never rebuilt. The surviving inhabitants were relocated to other villages and towns in the region, and gravestones were placed at the site of the tragedy.
It was a huge damage. And for Russia, it was too hard reestablish his economy for that issue, because this impact, they have to waste so much money to move the people and pick up another place and give another houses and all this procedure just for try to provide where they live in that moment. Now this is in 1995, and they forget it that in 2003 he says, oh, perhaps it's better for us, we can waste less money in the codes for codes. Now he's in 2010, the nature speak to them again in their own language. And what happened, it was a huge heat wave in the central Russia, it's in the central. Can you see how much was warm there? It was like a smoke in all the country, and it was so dangerous they have to use this mask. But someone can read what happened there? More detail?
Yes. The summer of 2010 was scorching. In June, Moscow recorded the highest temperature experienced there in the last 130 years. High temperatures caused drought and forest fires. A total of 127 settlements in Ryazan, Nizhny Novgorod, Kaluga, Tver, and many other regions suffered from the haze, with many villages burned. More than 50 people perished due to smoke and flames, and 1,200 apartment blocks were destroyed. Many countries, including Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Poland, helped to extinguish the burning forests.
Yes. And the other consequences that bring this heat wave, there was many, ¿cómo se dice sequía? Dry season?
Drought.
Okay. It was many drought in all the Moscow city and all these countries around. And this drought also brings like a consequence against more worse consequence, like fire forests. It was the fire forests affected these countries, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Poland. All days had to off this fire. Extinguish, thank you.
Extinguish.
Extinguish, okay. The fire, because the fire started to get close to their countries. And in Russia lose so much, in a huge part of the forest that it was making healthy this country. It was a great green area, but burned for that wave, for that heat wave. And it was in June in 2010. But what happened after that, 2010, and they still was joking. What happened is in the same country, they are living the consequences of the heat and warm, but for he was joking. In 2015, still making joking, but then for a period of time, the nature was talking to Russia. And the same year, 2010, what happened, it was an ice rain in Moscow also. And it's totally opposed to the first event that happened in June. This happened in December. And someone can read what some details about this event, please? Okay, I can read. The end of the year brought more abnormal weather to the Russian capital. Shortly before the new year, Moscow was lashed by freezing rain, and rather rare phenomenon that caught residents off guard. On the first day of the ice downpour, around 10 people need hospital treatment after sleeping on ice. And it wasn't just the street and sidewalks that turned to frost in the Moscow region. Power lines encrusted with the material broke. That was December. It was the time of New Year. And in this time, some communities, some cities, entire cities of Russia, they get out without electricity. And it was cool country. Even if they are a cool country and perhaps they are used to live in that condition, that's raining, it was something incredible. It was a rare phenomenon, like they say, it's never happened before. And it was so strong for them, surprise also. And this phenomenon also repeated in 2006, 2015 in January, and December 2015, 2016 also, they repeated the same event. And they say they don't know what happened. And if you read more about that kind of event, the causes, you can understand what happened in the climate change. I think it's important to understand that topic. So I would like to invite you to read about that event or the causes that provoke that event. This other event is in 2012, the flood in Krasnodar territory. Someone can read, please?
Yes. In July 2012, following heavy rains, 10 towns and port cities were washed away, including Byeletsik and Novorossiysk. But the worst part was borne by the city of Krimsk and its population of 57,000 people, of whom 150 perished. Eyewitnesses reported state that the tragedy occurred at night when everyone was asleep and there was no warning of the impending calamity.
I don't want to.
You don't want to see?
Yeah. What happened in that event is that many people was lose all the houses where they live, and the water that you can see in the image is still there per 2 months. And after that, the consequence of this dialogue that they call, they get many kind of pandemics, local pandemics, many sickness, mosquitoes, and other kind of problems, healthy problem that they get by these situations, because they still 2 months in water. And that is because the sea was growing 1.8% more the level of the sea. You can imagine how much is this growing? And let's go to the next event. 2013, also a flood in the far of east is still to affected to Russia. And can you see what's months? This is an stadium of Russia, and also it was affected so much. So let's go to start to finish, close, start to close. In 2014, the climate change, what happened was the point on inflection in the history of the climate change. And what happened in that situation is that all the natural disaster, or more the natural disaster happened in that year, and make us a summary, no, sumatoria.
What?
¿Cómo se dice que todos los desastres naturales hicieron una sumatoria de un pico alto?
Okay, all of the events produced the summary of a peak. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it was if you put in a scale, it was the point more higher of contamination of the global warming. It was increasing 5 times more than they expected. 5 times more. It was super dangerous, because this was provoking the inundations of the cyclones, the earthquakes, all this happened in the United States. And if you see the map, you see United States is here and Russia is here. And when United States was affected, this is United States. United States was affected, Russia is going to be repercuted, but supposedly have to be suffered 10 years later. But they don't expect 10 years, just 2 years, and they start to feel the symptoms of the climate change in their own country. And for that reason, it was a movement that started to protest it in 2014, that it was this protest that make the United Nations to take a decision to have this Paris Agreement, where they can take measures or take seriously this topic. And we can read here. Someone can read? Oh. Marco, can you read?
People's Climate March, PCM, was a large-scale activist event orchestrated by the People's Climate Movement to advocate for global action against climate change. It took place on Sunday, September 21, 2014, in New York City, along with a series of complementary actions around the world, many of which also took the name People's Climate March. With an estimated 311,000 participants, the New York event was the largest march against climate change in history.
Yeah. This time it started to the bigger protests. It started to be a conscience, and all the other nations, or the protesters of the other nations, started to join to this in order to arrive to the United Nations and make that they take serious that issue. Okay. And for that reason, 2015 take place the Paris Agreement, but this video that I'm going to show you is going to explain in a short way what is the Paris Agreement or in which consists. Can you listen, please?
What is the Paris Agreement? The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. This requires economic and social transformation to face the climate challenges now and moving into the future based on the best available science. The Paris Agreement works on a 5-year cycle of increasingly ambitious climate action. By 2020, countries communicate their plans known as nationally determined contributions. Countries communicate actions they will take to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in order to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. Countries also communicate actions they will take to build resilience to adapt to the impacts of rising temperatures. This may include information on adaptation and finance flows. The Paris Agreement also provides a framework for financial, technical, and capacity building support to those countries who need it. Starting in 2024, countries report transparently on actions taken. Collective progress under the Paris Agreement will be assessed through a global stocktake. This will lead to recommendations for countries to set more ambitious plans in the next round.
So that's in what consists the Paris Agreement. What I'm get a little bit disappointment is because they are projected this change to 2014, not 2024, and they planning to finish or to get the goal in 2035. It's like long time ago. And that is because the nations, the rich nation or the power nation, they cannot participate or assume that responsibility to make change or transformation in the economic or in their kind of industry that they have. And that's complicate a little bit the proposal of United Nations that they make it. Now, how we connect this issue with the Midnight Cry message, which is the connection that we found it. So how I was telling you that it was in 2014 was the turning point in terms of climate change. 2014 because it's the point more higher in the climate change, and also it was start the biggest protest in the world and for the climate change also. In this impact, like I said, on the world, it is scientific understanding and in response of governments to it, but it is also another area that has become politicized in this culture war, as Republican and evangelical ignore science and embrace conspiracy theories, all justified through a misinterpretation and literal reading of certain biblical passages. So, what is the problem of this project, or care of the world, or care of the environment? It's because there are ideologies that they are mixed in that, or conspiracy theories. There are groups or politicians that they are rejected the investigation of science, and they prefer to believe conspiracy theories. And that's have the connection because we have two extremes of information and they cannot perceive the reality. And also we have to recognize the good information because they are using that war of information and they are making a culture war. And they say, for example, in the case of Russia, Russia says, why we have to change? Why not change the other nation also? but all the nations are participant, but he is more affected because he is the bigger producer of oil. So for that reason, he's feeling more precious, perhaps.
Pressure.
Climate change, sorry?
More pressure.
Yeah, more pressure. Thank you. Climate change has also been shown to be part of the time of trouble, right? It is in our dispensation, and we have to recognize that this is an external issue that we cannot ignore. It's part of our time of trouble, and we have to face it with the tools that they give us, the message give us. It's like the two streams of information, good sources, finding the good sources that we have, and also to try to compare and contrast the history before what we are at, when I don't know how to say, which we are now. Does indicate that the climate change is part of this time of trouble, indicate us that in November, the fires, November 9th, fires in Australia and too many cataclysms events over the previous 18 months, the science and the message coincide. Okay. Mm-hmm. What it means is that all these events, all these fires that happen on, or cyclones or floods, like in German also the flood of this border of the rivers, what happened is they are tested, or ¿cómo se dice? Anunciado, prevenido.
Declared or announced.
They were announced before by the scientific, and they rejected because they believe conspiracy theories. Like jokes that Putin said, descend a little bit, and that's make more warm our earth, our planet. That is not scientific. He also, with all the scientific that they have in Russia, they cannot prove that. It's just an idea in order to don't recognize their fault. And that's aspect that I put here is not my opinion. It's what elder tests said in their studies. And we can also see them conservatism in this issue, when we treat like oh, we don't have to care, God is in control, God is doing that for punish that issue, and we try to this kind of event in this way. We cannot recognize that there is natural consequences of our destruction, progressive destruction that we create in our world. And it's a neglection of our part that we cannot recognize that, or we not be conscious. For that reason, it's important that we recognize that this is an event that is part in our time of trouble. Which is our limits to recognize that event? An elder test say that conspiracy theories is the only impediment that we have to recognize that's true.
Say that again. What is the only impediment?
Impediments to recognize that this is the conspiracy theories.
Okay.
Okay. That is our limit to recognize, to the accepting the climate change damage that they are causing. We cannot start to think, we cannot continue thinking that the natural disasters are the work of the Lord, because the Lord is not a Lord of destruction. It is a Lord of construction. How we say, creator. In understanding two streams of information, is elder test quote, I'm just quoting her. we learned how many of our beliefs were founded on an evangelical worldview that it is largely based on a conspiracy mentality and a manipulation of a scripture. And she recommended to see her presentations that last year, including the Ralph of to Wave, that he's the person to bring conspiracy theories to the advertising also. The conservative evangelical worldview of climate change is to deny that is the happening. This topic has not been explored deeply in the presentation, but we should have to accept it as a living reality by now. This article, this is I take from an article that she sent in the media broadcast, deals with the collapse of the Pine Island Glacier in Antarctic. For your reference, there are 5 main contributors to warning-driven sea level rise. So this is the 5 contributors to the warning level. It's like the thermal expansions, because we produce so much CO2. And the second one is the change is groundwater storage. Like the water is running under the soil, the ground. The third one is the loss of ice from glaciers. Like 4 glaciers, they are losing their ice because they melting. They are melting. Loss of ice from Greenland and loss of ice from Antarctic. And in 2015 to 2019 to 2020, Russia discovered that 5 of their glacier, the bigger glacier that they have, they are melting now. And they didn't realize. They discovered one island because they take a picture of their glacier and they discovered an island inside because the ice was melting and they didn't realize. And that is the reason the glacier melting is the reason why the sea is growing. And for that reason, they have floods in the country. And it was start to melting before 2015. But in 2015, they started to observe their own glaciers. Just for closing, I'm going to conclusion to try to connect with the Midnight Cry message, this topic. The climate change have a strong connection with the Midnight Cry message by the 2 streams of information. This issue also have equality among the nation. So this is 2 reasons. The first one is how we treat this issue. If we believe that this is a scientific issue and we are responsible, if we are responsible, we have the possibility to change that, take measures to change the situations. The other reason is that all the nations be equal. Like, for example, Russia is a big nation and also it is a power nation. If for that reason, we are waiting that they submit to the plan and they inside to the agreement. He say, I am in an agreement, but he doesn't believe, he doesn't take the real measure that they can do it. They just doing what they feel comfortable, but not that they can. So that is delayed in the process.
Yeah, yes, I was just agreeing.
Okay.
Because there was one, after you finish your conclusion, my question.
Okay. The other point is how to see in how we fulfill the job of that the Lord gave us in the Eden to us. One of the functions the Lord gave to the man, it was take care of the garden, of the nature, of the animals, of the plants. And we have to care them. No, we have to abuse of them. So in that way, how we treat the nature, how we carefully fulfill the job of the Lord, we are going to incite in a process of equality also with our labor, with our inferior, we can say inferior a weak aspect, I don't know how to say, but the nature is something weak that they cannot defend them from the men do it. And we have to protect them because they don't have protection. It is for that reason, the Lord gives to the men that job, care of the nature, care of the garden. We have to care our garden, our world garden. If we don't care, the consequences for us, we are living the natural disaster that cannot avoid it because there are no forests that can protect us. There is not a clean air that we can breathe us. For that reason, we live in a pandemic or all this kind. The fact, it was a news that say that all these natural disasters announce another new pandemics because there are many bodies that get it in this composition, and they get a contaminated environment for the people, and they are going to start to get sick. And they believe that all these events are going to bring another pandemics for the world, or systemic in this case. Syndemic.
Endemic, yeah.
Which is your question?
Yeah, so Putin says he does more than the European Union for climate change. At the same time, you explained that he's not really doing anything, or he's not really, fighting climate change. So how can he say that? I mean, there must be facts, or you have an idea?
So, yeah, he doesn't believe that the climate change, well, I think that he believes, but he doesn't want to recognize because he loses so much, especially in the economic aspect. But he recognized that the climate change caused a damage because 2015 they realized that the glacier of fourth glacier of Russia, they were melting, and what they are provoking is that the sea was growing and make the flooding for that reason. And even if he doesn't believe so much, when he showed that don't believe so much, he make jokes still because they don't want to change their function of the source of the economy. You know, the source of economy is the oil in Russia. But if they don't produce more oil, so their economy is not going to be strong. Even now it's not strong. But if they change, like for example, produce electric cars, they are going to take a long time to be established until they start to sell the cars. And that is the problem. It's a fact that they don't want to accept completely the agreement, but at the same time, he making a change because Russia is the first affected. If all the sea is growing, Russia is going to be affected because Russia have more glaciers than other area. And they are going to float in all with all the glacier that have Russia, can flood in all the country.
I have a problem expressing my ideas, but I can see two issues here. By the Sunday law, Russia should be off the stage of a superpower, right? From now, Russia should have a progressive fall up to the Sunday law. Two things are going to be affected. One is Gazprom, the pipeline. If the pipeline comes through, then Russia will be forced to produce more oil to put on the market. And by doing that, there will be increasing global warming. If that happens by increasing global warming, they will be affecting themselves. So what I see will take down Russia is they want to keep being a superpower, and to keep being a superpower, they will lose the superpower.
Yeah. For that reason, in that aspect, they are finding a balance, equality between the nations. For example, some nations in Africa are making, are creating projects of get energy for aeolic energy or solar energy or hydroelectric energy. Yeah. In Russia, they can, because they can produce, for example, aeolic energy or hydroelectrical energy. Hydro energy. Yeah. And they just resist. It's because it is a fight of power. And also Russia is like a belief, conspiracy theories about when we talk about that topic, he believes in conspiracy theories. For that reason, until now you believe in conspiracy theories, it's like the people get without words with us answer or jokes that Putin is doing now. But he's taking measure because the country, in fact, he reduced 25% of the production in their own country of oil because is more affected, and also is the country that more measure taken until now.
Russia?
That other countries, yeah. He make more in the environment, but it's not enough that he can. You know, it's like he can do it more. So he's doing more than the other countries. He reduced more, like at 25% more than the other countries, but it's not that he can do it. He can do it more. And that is, we have to compare. He can reduce 75%, and he's doing just only 25%. Yeah? And they expected that Russia reduced 50%. And they say, okay, he's taken serialization. But also, I think in the foot of the Putin also say, okay, I'm reducing, or in my case, it's not this. For example, Germany, what he's doing, they are start to produce more electric cars. And start to reduce the oil or gasoline. Yeah. The climate change in Russia affected directly to the United States and Canada, especially these two countries. For that reason, they are make pressure to him. Also because it's in a project of the United Nations, right?
So if I understand right, correctly, the climate issue is part of the Midnight Crime message because it's an essential topic in the information warfare or in the two streams of information, where we can see a huge impact on nations, on Earth, etc.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the key or the main, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And so we have seen Australia. We now see Russia, and it's really interesting to see. Yeah, I was surprised that Putin is making these jokes and that he's playing it down and he's not really doing anything. Yeah.
Yeah. The strong nations, they are suffering more disaster, natural disaster, like a United States, German now start, Canada is suffered, I mean, so much the damage, Russia, but the problem in Russia is also that Russia doesn't public so much. You know, the media, and they don't cover so much because it's limited there. But the reporters esteems that there are more damage is affecting now Russia. So we know that we are close to Panium, and Russia have to be like losing the battle of Panium, right? But for the moment, we can see it's impossible that United States can face it, Russia, because Russia is not too weak military, like we believe. But apparently the natural disaster, like in 1995, caused so much damage in the economy of the Russia. Some experts believe that the climate change is going to punish Russia, and their economy is going to be in a critical way, we can say, or in a critical situation. For that reason, it's going to be, well, they believe that it's going to be mark the fall of Russia in our generation. Experts say, but just they comment. I don't know. I cannot tell you in what aspect, what they are based, but only they observe the natural disaster that can be fell upon the Russia.
You have this concept where they say some countries are above sea level and other countries are below sea level. Is there any measurable term to know what how much something is above or below sea level, or what was the previous sea level in the past and what is the present sea level now?
I'm not sure if I understand your question. Marco, can you translate for me, please?
No, él pregunta qué es el nivel del mar, qué ha sido el nivel del mar antes y qué es el nivel del mar ahora, porque uno se refiere a países estando debajo o encima del nivel del mar. Entonces, como el mar cambia, ¿entiendes, no?
For the moment, it was increasing the level of the sea, and 2.5% more than they expected. That's measure was expected to fulfill in 10 years, but it's happening 5 years. Is so much soon, too much soon for this event. also what is happening is when you mix the water of the sea that is salty and the water of the glacier that is salt, that make combination that make a little bit acid the water, more acid, and that's affected to the stratus, to the state of the soil, and that is, they believe that they provoke the earthquake or the sequirts, maremotos, no sé cómo se dice.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, the earthquakes in the sea, I don't know how to say it.
What is a earthquake in the sea?
Okay, you understand why? Yeah.
The earthquake in the sea produces tsunamis, but how do they call it? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sister. I really appreciated this presentation.